So open that page, I'll search for my fix, find what I need in the deep dark abyss.
Hey, it's time for another AI Skeptics podcast. Today we have our very close friend and bandmate and colleague, Tom Adams, visiting us. Hey, Tom.
Hey, guys. Welcome, Mayor Tom.
Thank you.
I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but we, all three of us, are in a band together. Not the first or last band that we'll ever be in, but it's the Tomtown Ramblers, and it's named after Mayor Tom. So it's kind of like having a celebrity amongst us here. Having
We
Tom
are the
here.
official band of Tomtown.
We got a lot to talk about today. I sent you guys a recent article from The Atlantic. I'll just dig into that one if you don't mind. It's like talks about OpenAI and ChatGPT and how it claims to be objective. And it's just like such a triggering word for me. I wanted to talk about it. Because like last episode we talked about the notion of like the trust hype cycle and how too much trust was why I wrote Weapons of Mass Destruction back in the day. Like there was too much trust in big data and algorithms. But what I didn't mention then, and I want to talk about today, is like the reason people trusted big data back then is because it was everybody claimed it was objective. It was like, oh, it's objective. It's like there's no bias because computers don't have human urges to be biased. Like it was really naive. And it was wrong. There was plenty of bias and a lack of objectivity back then. But it's just like, it's an amazing recurrence. It's like this entire, it's come back to where it started with big data, but now it's ChatGPT. And it's a different kind of claim to think of a chat bot, being objective. So the Atlantic article, the person who wrote it, and I should actually know that person's name. That person, who is it? Vahini Vara. It's a good article. Claims that it wasn't actually even intending to be objective. It was just saying that. It was just it's just a marketing term, right? That in fact it was like techno positive, and one of the things that the author did was asked like ChatGPT to like talk about itself in it. It just was just like very pro technology.
That was an amazing part of the article. It was like, in the article, I think it was like, summarize the future of AI in 10 words. And that it sounds like a commercial. It's like intelligent, independent, agentic, who even knows? It was just such positive spin. Yeah,
it was like a total self-own on like what the agenda actually is. But the other thing that was like really fascinating to me was that because this person is an Atlantic author and journalist, like somehow managed to talk to someone at OpenAI and get them to change the prompt. Like they got them to like in real time change the way the model worked. And I feel like that's my favorite part in some sense. Like it just demonstrates so viscerally how random and like how powerful the folks who like happen to work at OpenAI are. Like they can just change a prompt and change the entire flavor of like people's experience on like one of the most popular chat bots in the universe. Anyway, it was fascinating to me. It's just like it's an echo of the bullshit that we experienced, 10 years ago. It's like, oh, this bullshit is come back. I'm sure it's not the second time this particular brand of bullshit came here. I'm sure like there's been many, many rounds of this particular type of scientific, stuff. I mean, for that matter, like we all know that like the original statisticians were eugenicists. Like they invented statistics essentially because they're like, let's prove that white people are superior. You know, it was like the original pseudoscientific bullshit. So it's not at all new, but it is surprisingly consistent. And like also, it always surprises me how much people want to believe it, like how much it works as a marketing thing.
That's one thing I think the article, the essay was great about, and was showing both how OpenAI they've updated their, what do they call it, model spec or something. They've got a technical document that goes along with their ChatGPT model. And according to this article, there was a subtle change from saying the model seeks to be objective to be like, oh, the model seeks to be, somewhat optimistic about tech. I forget the exact words. It was still made to sound anodyne, but the point is there was a paper trail somewhere, according to this journalist, like, oh, they are slightly drifting away from the, initial goal of being objective. That was in the prior drafts of this model spec. What I think is interesting is the like hidden in plain sight. Fine, that model spec is out there, but so, it's far overshadowed by the number of major TV commercials that are running for ChatGPT and the other marketing hype that they're putting out. So it's like over here in our scientific division, we've released a little model spec that reveals we're moving away from objectivity. But over here with 99.99% of our public presence, like we're still selling the same thing. And, yeah, that's an amazing achievement of doublespeak. I'm glad this essay is like trying to shine a light on the model spec and saying, hey, they're really admitting that they're moving the goalposts here, but in most of what they say publicly, it's nowhere near obvious.
I mean, along those same lines of like, not really hiding very well. And actually, like, there's a lot of ways. One of my favorite things to do about evil people is to appreciate them, like for what they give us as examples to not follow, But I'm thinking about Grok and Elon Musk. Like one of my favorite things about this whole conversation really about objectivity and like trust and stuff is Grok. I mean, as an example of how like it is explicitly being cultivated to behave to reflect the brain of Elon Musk, which is just like harrowing and terrible to imagine. It's the closest I ever come to pitying an algorithm. That's what I'm thinking, like what it must be like to try to be Grok, not that Grok is conscious, but it's just like, oh, can you imagine trying to like really, really understand how Elon Musk thinks and be like that? Like that's scary, right? But more to my point, it's just such a great demonstration of how like, yeah, this isn't at all objective. This is like a reflection of how he wants things to look. And it's just like, thank you, Elon. Thank you for like putting that out there for everyone to absolutely, experience like firsthand. Tom, like Tom, if you're like typing, it's like very loud.
Oh my goodness. So sorry.
Yeah, I actually probably Justin can take care of it after this. But okay, thanks, Justin. So Tom, can we talk about the recent executive order?
Sure.
This matters to us a lot, actually. Like, as algorithmic auditors, and I don't know if I mentioned that Tom is also our colleague at Orca and at our nonprofit Ocean. We really care about the notion of like state regulations for AI because federal regulations for AI are not anywhere on the horizon after Trump got back into the White House. So it's all about the states. And much to my alarm, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't understand anything, Trump recently signed an executive order that there would be no state AI regulation at all. So whenever this kind of thing happens, I'm like, I need to talk to Mayor Tom because he'll explain what this actually means and what it doesn't mean.
Because Mayor Tom is a lawyer, by the way. I don't know if we said
Mayor
that
Tom
either.
is our lawyer.
Among my hats, guitar player, lawyer.
A guitar playing lawyer.
I had a thought as I was reviewing articles and analysis of this, which is that there are lawsuits being brought and moving forward with some degrees of success at this early stage that have nothing to do with federal executive orders or state regulations regarding artificial intelligence. And maybe we can return to that later. But both the federal government and state governments can be pretty feckless on things of important substance when there's substantial lobbying money involved. And it's nice that that's not the end of the story. Anyhow, executive orders are not law. They're policy goals or policy directions by the executive. So they haven't done anything. The executive order doesn't do anything, this one or any other prior ones, as it relates to the states. It just instructs the various entities of the executive office to do things. In this case, they're they're doing like three main things. They're looking into challenging state laws that are problematic under the president's eyes, exploring preemption, which is, to me kind of hilarious, of state laws, and otherwise looking for unlawful state laws, whatever that means.
Sorry, Tom, sorry to interrupt, but what do you mean by they? Who's they?
The president has directed three different agencies, the DOJ, the FCC, and the FTC, to do things, to enforce the executive order. So the DOJ has a AI litigation task force, which actually I kind of liked the name of that. I thought maybe we should steal that for Ocean and call ourselves the AI litigation task force, like ALTI or something like that. Or
maybe the other litigation task force, the other AI
litigation task force. So that is the goal of that. Seemingly is to bring lawsuits against states for interfering in interstate commerce, which is a well litigated area over 200 years of American history, and has some pretty clear standards, which do not give a lot of support for this executive order, or any. There was a Gorsuch in 2023 authored a Supreme Court opinion called I forget what it's called, National Pork or something like that, that pretty much shot down a state's attempt to a challenge to a state's laws regarding interstate commerce. The idea basically being that the Supreme Court will support a state's attempt to protect its citizens so long as it doesn't unfairly discriminate against other states. Okay. And this case was actually seemingly somewhat discriminatory against another state involved packaging or whatever. And the Supreme Court still upheld it recently. So it's a extreme uphill battle that no real case history supports at the Supreme Court level or any other level to challenge states' interference with interstate commerce on these types of things where the laws are protecting the citizens of the state. So
okay,
that's
dumb
one.
That down for us, Tom. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's so abstract. Like when it comes to like regulating AI.
So a state, a state regulates AI to protect its citizens, right? Mm-hmm. And the brain trust behind the AI litigation task force says, oh, well, by protecting your citizens, you're interfering, you're imposing your law effectively on other states. And that's unfair, is what
okay,
their
so let me give
argument
you an
would be.
example.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask to be like really precise. Like, let's say the state of Utah decided that chatbots are making kids kill themselves, and that should be illegal. What would be the claim for another state to say, hey, you're harming us by imposing that law?
Yeah, well, like I said, there are lots of cases upholding a state's ability to protect its own citizens, and not a lot of cases saying that interferes with interstate commerce. So
okay, so they just wouldn't exist.
An example would be.
What would they even try to argue? Like, oh, you're depriving us of the training data that we would have got from Utah, or what is their, you're complaint?
Imposing your standards by imposing stricter standards in your state. You're effectively imposing it on everyone, which has been rejected in various non-directly similar fashions, like security checks or whatever have, if each state has its own security regulation or whatever, that would be so hard. And it turned out, it wasn't that hard, and they actually could do it. An example that people cite is train cars, to give you a sense of how far back you have to go on this sort of thing. A state said trains can't be longer than 50 cars in our state. And that was considered potentially interfering with interstate commerce because long trains go across various states. And if South Carolina says trains can only be 50 cars, but the train is going to North Carolina, that interferes with North Carolina's
I see. That
interstate commerce.
Sense.
Right.
But you're basically thinking that this particular executive order is not worth the paper that it's written on.
Well, there are different prongs.
What about the two other ones?
The challenge on the interstate commerce is doesn't have a lot of legal support to it. But, they can basically, the DOJ can try and bring this case, and it has a lot of history rejecting the notion. Maybe there'll be some state law that comes along that actually does fit into those parameters, but not so much right now. The other argument, which I think is the funniest, is they've ordered some agency, I forget which one it is, to explore preemption. That maybe there's, I don't know, they're going to go try and find some federal law that could preempt the state laws. The notion of preemption is that it commonly used for banking. If a federal law can come in if a federal law is actually passed and preempt existing state laws to create uniform regulation, and that is not problematic from a federalism perspective. And so that happened with banking, so that there could be a federal regulator applying uniform laws to banking. The shortfall here for the executive order is that there aren't currently federal laws on AI regulation. So It would be hard to argue that a state law should be preempted by a non-existent federal law. There's a Communications Act that gives the FCC, I believe, authority, but there's been to make regulations. And so maybe they're going to try and argue that AI is telecommunications, but there's been a lot of literature and some cases that have determined that AI and everything similar is not telecommunication, and therefore outside of the FCC's purview.
I just had to drink my entire wine in order to live through that explanation.
Is that too much?
I'm so sorry, Tom. It's so technical. From
Does
my
preemption
perspective, it's
preemption. Basically, they're trying to do interstate commerce nonsense claims and they're trying to do preemption nonsense claims in the absence of anything legally in their favor for doing those things. Not
and Tom,
to mention,
to be clear, like, it's not your fault. This stuff is just, it is technical. I feel like the whole discussion here, I mean, tell me if you agree, but like the whole thing, the moratorium, like we heard about the moratorium and the beautiful bill, then he sort of understood in the Senate and like a bunch of the Congress people were like, bill. I didn't even know about that, you know? And then they got rid of it and then it came back and then it went away. And now this, I feel like
it just came back a month ago in the defense thing and it got rejected in that one again. Like it's extremely unpopular to preempt states' attempt to protect people. Extremely unpopular. David Sachs does not care that it's extremely unpopular or that he's extremely unpopular. He doesn't know probably that he's extremely unpopular.
Yeah, but I just to finish the thought though, I feel like the part of the reason it gets a lot of serious consideration, even among journalists, is because it's relatively technical and you're like, oh, I mean, I don't remember who it was, but there's some pretty serious journalist who like took up the question, should AI be regulated state by state or by the federal government? And you're like, that's not the point. Like
if they're even taking that question up, they're directly receiving, you know, feedback from this group of idiots in Silicon Valley. The only reason they're even thinking about it is because somebody's whispering in their ear that, well, who knows, despite 200 years of legal history, maybe something would be different if we, you know, preempt it. Like it undermines the entire notion of the United States government at the state and federal level to like, oh, we can just eliminate state laws by decree. It's nonsensical.
Do you think it's just a chance?
The real goal of it is to never have federal regulation at all. Like the real goal is to not have any regulation whatsoever because they know they control the federal level and they're like, let's also control the state level. Like that's really what it's about, right?
It's ultimately, it's about trying to do things in as undemocratic a way as possible. Like, if you really cared about this subject, pass a law. Oh, well, you control you've got Congress and the president, go pass a law that says what you want it to say, but they can't because it's extremely unpopular. So they try and do things by executive order, which is make-believe.
Is there even the notion of a negative law? Like you just said, oh, pass a law. Like the law they might want to pass is no regulations allowed at any level, state, federal, local. Is that a law that can be written?
Oh, I don't know.
Prohibiting regulation on a certain topic?
You've stumped me. It would probably be really hard to write.
That's I think back to when the discussion came up in the Big Beautiful Bill, like, is there going to be the 10-year moratorium? And we, in our Orca and Ocean lives, we have the opportunity to talk to lawmakers and their staffs. And when that moratorium was on the table, the staffs were kind of like, well, we'll put this on the back burner because if the moratorium, meaning we'll put our AI legislation idea on the back burner. Because if this moratorium comes through, it's just going to be dead. And, we have a lot of priorities we want to worry about. So if this one is looking to have worse chances, we'll focus on other things. And that's a very terrible way of just deflating an issue that people really care about. It's just like, this is not going to make it to the agenda. We're going to gum up the works. Even though this stuff is baseless, it's enough to give the legislative staffers like other stuff to prioritize. And it's the worst way of killing something.
That could be for people who might have been inclined to consider things anyhow. Otherwise. But, along those lines, there's this other area where they're going to, which the federal government has control over, which is funding. So they're going to put restrictions around funding on certain things. In particular, they highlighted broadband funding to various states, which is, some defined amount. And then, vaguely kind of other agency discretionary funding, which they didn't identify, but could theoretically exist. and they would limit, basically try and use that to penalize states who pass laws that they don't like. I guess that's a perspective thing. I don't know. Colorado comes up a lot, by the way, in the discussions of all of this, our friends in Colorado.
Do you think that's something they could really actually do?
They could threaten it, absolutely. And what I saw was, states that are relatively less well off and more dependent on rural funding for broadband might be inclined to not challenge it. Just going down this path, like, fine, we don't have the money or the resources to fight on this, so we just won't pass it because we really need that broadband funding. But on the other hand, in similar situations where they tried to do this, like the Department of Transportation tried to restrict or rescind money as a penalty, the agency lost. States sued and challenged it, and they lost. At least order was put in place to freeze the attempt to do that. It hasn't gone to the Supreme Court yet, but right now that strategy failed to penalize by restricting funds in at least some cases.
So it's like the Trump, taking aim at the law firms and then taking aim at Ivy League colleges, and now it's taking aim at state level AI regulation.
Right. Well, they've already done that in other areas too, but they're just going to apparently it's a success for them, at least for their funders or their buddies, to say that they're going to do things and gum up the works and create headaches, even if they constantly lose in court, which they do. They're like bang their head against the wall. All right, we'll just do it again. We'll do it over here. It failed here. We'll just keep banging our head.
Isn't that sort of Trump's signature move even before he was the president? Just to have jillions of lawsuits, almost all of which are losers? Yeah,
definitely lawsuits. Although, he's kind of he kind of fits in the ethos of move fast and break things, right?
I don't think this quite fits into that, though, in prior lawsuits and prior campaigns against institutions. I think his base was more with him. I don't think his base is actually with him for this, don't protect children from suicide on chatbots. I think
it's
most
extremely
people are
unpopular.
Yeah, exactly.
And
we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure that Jake got his say. Jake, you had a discussion to bring up here.
Yeah, I'll say it pretty quick because it's kind of builds on this conversation. I feel like this executive order talks about, hey, look, everybody, let's get real. It's time to win the fight with China. We can't be slowed down by states getting in the way. So this is what we have to do. And I've been noticing a little change in tone in the newsletter sphere that I live in. Wall Street Journal's AI newsletter, which I read frequently, and another one from Jack Clark. It's called Import AI. And Jack Clark is the head of policy, I think, at Anthropic now. He's been writing a newsletter since before he had that job. In both of those outlets, I've been recently seeing a change of tone towards AI is happening. Let's just embrace it. Let's celebrate the wins and the successes. In the Wall Street Journal, the headline that comes to mind recently from the newsletter was Anthropic signs up, I think it was Accenture, but it was a Big Five consultancy as one of its biggest enterprise clients. And it's just they're like, hey, we see the potential here. We're going to make it happen, and we've inked this big deal. And so everyone, we can all expect who is ever Accenture's clients will soon be using a lot more Claude. And,
it wasn't just using a lot more Claude, but Accenture is going to ram Claude down everybody's throat until they gag. Yeah.
Actual expertise, figuring out where they can ram it. And the other one is Jack Clark. And Jack Clark, who is for a long time on he'll take off his Anthropic hat in the newsletter and say, I'm speaking as Jack Clark. I really worry about this stuff, safety, that's how he comes across to me. I've been a reader of that letter for a long time. And then in a recent one, he's like, I finally got to look at the EU's, little nutrition label for an AI system. And he's like, do you know that this could take thousands of hours to do a nutrition label? Like, God, maybe we have to get real here. He's saying, like, he finally took a look at what it would take to address AI safety at a level of production and scale that it's being used. And he's like, thousands of hours, like, that sounds like a lot. And I just thought, we're talking about trillions of dollars. So for data centers, and the notion that a price tag of thousands of hours is like, maybe we need to walk away from this issue. It was just a downer for me. I'm going to put it in the rants, little featurette at the end of our episode. Like, this is my rant. I'm like, yes, there's a price tag. It's going to cost thousands of hours. You're claiming it's going to have a multi-trillion-dollar impact to everybody's benefit. So certainly we can spare a few thousand hours if safety is really an issue.
I mean, there's already cost. There's, harmed and dead people.
Thank you. That's the alternative to the thousands of hours, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. How many hours of safety testers' time is one child's suicide worth?
It's it's a eugenicist argument.
Tom, we do have end of episode rants. Jake has already done his rant. I'm going to do a rant now, and you're in charge of figuring out a rant by the time I'm finished with my rant. Okay. This is how well we prep our guests. My rant is the naming of people who work in like what could go wrong in AI or algorithm space, how it's changed like multiple times, and now is like no longer even recognizable from where it started. So it was this like fairness, I think, back in the day, like, I think at Google I want to say that Timnit Gebru like was working at the Google Fairness Group or whatever. And then it became like trust and safety or safety. I can't even remember all of the different iterations. But now all these groups, if they exist, which many of them do not anymore, because a lot of the big tech companies have just kicked everybody out who ever worked on any of this. But it's called security now. Like, who could argue with security? It's just as far away from its origins as possible. And I've noticed a likewise, like, I've been going to a lot of conferences, because we just started this new nonprofit, and I'm trying to hustle for it and figure this out, like the landscape. But a lot of the topics now are on security topics in ways that I just never. It's almost become like a subsidiary of the privacy conversation. But it's like more like, hackers and like national security. It's basically like a national security takeover of the question of like civil rights. And it's just, that's my rant. Tom, do you have anything to rant about?
I would just say that some of the things that you're talking about here make me think that the AI folks are really ramping up their marketing efforts in the absence of results. They're going for, what if marketing type of things, like the future is amazing potentially with AI, let us do it for you. Like at this point, they should be able to point to stuff to show that, and they don't have it. They don't have revenue. They don't have like particularly impressive results in any field, really. So they're like, hey, we got a contract. The future is so bright, we should just abandon any attempt to rein any of this in because we got a contract with a consulting firm. Like they're just, it feels a lot more desperate. That Sam Altman just feels like incredibly desperate these days. He's just like 100% marketing pitch man, willing to say anything to get people into his circus tent. And really at this point, OpenAI whatever, 200 million users. They should have something that they could point to a why it's actually good, other than, kind of absurd, over the top marketing pitches. And they don't.
I will just say that, like, I've gone from wanting to punch Sam Altman in the face to just kind of pitying him. So I kind of agree with you, Tom. And thank you for that rant.
Let him talk, man. He's like doing more harm than good.
He really is. Okay, well, I want to thank Tom for joining us here in this episode of AI Skeptics, and we're looking forward to the next one. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for having me. Thanks all loyal listeners. See you next time. Bye.